and most respected and beloved today's attraction of the talk, Mark ARANHA, is a scholar, University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, and my dear teacher, the director for the MK Haji Chair for Migration Studies, Dr. Shibinu, and Mr. Sharavanan, the Department of History, Fahad, Department of History, Dasila, Department of History, and my dear students. And it is my pleasure to be here with you with a icon of the day, Mark ARANHA, a wonderful research scholar, ethnomusicologist, and a researcher of the Bake-Jairazbhoy, the Bake recordings of the Kerala, especially from the Cochin areas. So before entering into that particular area, I just wanted to introduce you some of the concept, why these talks is being very much relevant. Because in history department, we have been conducting so many programs from the 2015 itself, especially after the arrival of our principal, Dr. Aziz. 2017 onwards, we conducted so many international seminars and webinars for the sake of understanding history in multiple ways. So you know what is the relevance of thinking beyond the border? That is why we connected the ethnomusicology, ethnography, history, historiography together to provide you a broad-based understanding of the history. So we all know that now the new education policy or changing parameters of the education system, that's talking about the broad-based education. You have to think about cross-border nature. So only studying the history without knowing the larger context, it may create some difficulties for your higher studies. So there we have to think about a different dimension and perception of the history, especially through the Indian Ocean world. So you know that Professor Bake-Jairazbhoy, the adjunct professor from the University of California, she has been appointed as the chair professor of the Bake-Jairazbhoy Chair for Indian Ocean Studies. 2018 onward, she is continuous contact with our department, and almost all the Arnold Bake recordings she tried to repatriate into the Malabar. So I am sure that you may be confused with the term the Arnold Bake. Arnold Bake was a Dutch ethnomusicologist. He was visited Malabar many times, especially after the 1930s, and he correctly visited the place of Tirurangadi, Parappanangadi, Pullangod Estate in Nellambur, and the Mambura Mosque during the time of 1937. So that particular period, you cannot imagine that even though he used the Tefi recording technology, he recorded some of the Mappila songs, Kolkalis, and the Oppana Patu, and he even recorded one of the marriage function that performed in Parappanangadi coastal area. So by the time Amy arrived in the campus 2018, she played some of the musics performed by these Mappilas years before. That time we actually wondered. We cannot imagine that the almost 80 years back, the recordings that repatriated into Kerala, repatriated into the Malappuram district after a long time. So I have experienced a wonderful thing in my life, because I told you I share this story with my students all the time. I am from Parappanangadi coastal village, and basically I am also a performance scholar. I am also related to the ethnomusicology, and my topic of the dissertation at the PhD dissertation was related to the music and the culture of the Mappila community. So I am a part of the Kolkali team. So Amy came to PSMO college. She played some of the Kolkali that's still prevalent in Parappanangadi area. So that particular form of Kolkali you can find out even today also performed by these present generation of the Parappanangadi village. So this is actually a wonderful thing, connected with the people of different phases, people of different localities on the basis of the music. So that is what is the history department is very curious to provide as a resource center in order to connect with the scholars, those who are working in the Indian Ocean world, and to the Mappila local performing arts group. So that is why New York University student, that from New York University of Abu Dhabi student, they visited our department as well as our college. They interacted with our students as a part of their J-term study abroad program. So before the corona, they came to our college, interacted with our students. So by this nature, we can assure that the link between the scholars and the local performers acted, and these channelizing through the performance, through the activities of the Department of History. So that is something very unique, because it is our duty to keep all these historical evidence for the past, for the future. The historical past that we have to keep for the future generation. That is what is AMI did, because AMI's professor, AMI's husband was the Nasir Ali Jairazbhoy, and Arnold Bake was the teacher of the Nasir Ali Jairazbhoy. He visited our place. He recorded almost all the things. And the exact piece of the Kolkali, we doesn't have that type of recordings belongs to the 1937. So in order to study about the Parappanangadi Kolkali team, you have to identify the sources of the California University. You know that irony is how that difficulty it was. So in order to study the Mapula songs of the Malabar, we have to approach the University of California, especially through the study of the Arnold Bake. So we have to repatriate all these songs back into Malabar, all these recordings back into TIRURANGADI and Parappanangadi, and we have a plan to keep these particular the recordings and audios as well as the videos, photographs for the coming generation. That is the motive behind the establishment of the Bake-Jairazbhoy Chair for Indian Ocean Studies. And you know the importance of the Indian Ocean Studies, a newly emerged concept within the scholars. They all very curious to study about the Indian Ocean region, and they wanted to recut, they wanted to rewrite the history of the world on the basis of the Indian Ocean. Because we know in the history of the world, we can see that different dimension either through related to the Atlantic or related to the Mediterranean Sea. So this is a new milestone in order to recreate the history of the entire world on the basis of the culture, ethnomusicology, and also history related to the Indian Ocean world and its around. So there we are focusing on the Bake-Jairazbhoy Chair for Indian Ocean Studies, and this program is jointly organized by the MK Haji Chair for Migration Studies and also the Bake-Jairazbhoy Chair for Indian Ocean Studies. You may wonder that what is the relationship between this migration and ethnomusicology, and you curious about to know that some songs, some genre of the Mapula songs that belongs to the letter songs category. So these letter song category is purely connected to the migration, those who are migrated from Malabar to the other parts of the world. That's created an emptiness, a loneliness within the minds of the family of these migrants. And especially the other parts of the story, that's created a label known as the Gulf Wives. And I'm sure the director of the MK Haji Chair for Migration Studies can talk more about this particular area. So these ethnomusicology, especially through the letter songs, we can connect it with the migration studies also. So we also given equally importance to the migration studies and related to how these letter songs played a crucial role in order to reconstruct the study of the migration aspects of the Kerala. That is also our motive behind these particular two chairs. So I do not want to enlarge my talk here, because we are all curious to hear from the Mark ARANHA and his research. And he is actually basically from University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, and he was completed his masters from University of Cape Town. Mark ARANHA is an Indian musician and PhD candidate in musicology at the University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg. He is based between New Delhi, Johannesburg and Kozhikode when he is starting his research performance tradition melodies of the Mapilas. This research continues from his master's work on the history and selected song tradition of Jews and Mapilas in Kerala as communities arising out of pre-colonial network of exchange across the Indian Ocean. For more than a decade, as a performer, as a composer and an arranger, the Mark ARANHA has played and recorded across a variety of genre and contexted with artists such as Susmita Sen and Taneka Tina, Parker, Bianca, Jabjeet Jesse, Madam Kobal, and Sumangala Damodaran, and many others. So almost all reputed musicians are connected with our keynote speakers today. As an academic, he has given lectures and presented paper at several universities and conferences, and was the recipient of the special commendation at the British Forum for the Ethnomusicology in 2019. He graduated with the distinction in ethnomusicology from the University of Cape Town in 2021. He also holds a BA Economics degree from St. Stephen College, New Delhi. His scholarly and creative interests came together, collaborating in 3 musical productions as a part of his ongoing work with the International Research Project Recentering Afro-Asia. He is also a member of the Sound Praxis Exchange Research Group and the Kukutana Ensemble with the musician from Ethiopia, Zanzibar, and South Africa. This is a small bio of our keynote speaker. With this word, let me welcome our dignitaries to this wonderful function. Firstly, I welcome the chair of this function, Dr. Shibinu, to make some commentaries, especially on these letter songs and the migration studies and migration profile of the Malabar. And I do welcome the spirit and motive of all these particular program. The beginning itself I mentioned to you, History Department changed its paradox from the 2017 after the arrival of our principal. So it's actually a visionary can lead an institution and also simultaneously the department activities, though he is actually from the botany department. And I am sure more than botany, from the PSMO college, he learned much more about the ethnomusicology than the botany. So I welcome the base and all the core stone of this particular movement and the functions of the history department, our respected principal, Dr. Aziz K, to this function. And I also welcome today's presenter. With all my happiness and gratitude, I welcome you, Mark ARANHA, to interact with our students. And I welcome Sharavanan sir, the Department of History, and I welcome Fahad, Department of History, and I welcome Jasila also. And also I welcome all of you to make this session a fruitful one, and we look forward to interact with you after the session, and you have enough time to ask your questions and demolish your queries and everything. And I hope a wonderful time ahead. With these few words, I request Dr. Shibinu S to preside over the function. Thank you.
Most respected Chief Guest of today, Shri Mark ARANHA, respected Principal Dr. Aziz K, respected Muhammad Hasib, who is the Director of Bake-Jairazbhoy Chair of our college, respected friends from the Department of History, Sharavanan sir, Fahad sir, and Jasila madam, my dear students. Actually, I'm so happy to attend this function because what we are experiencing today is something which the students of some other national reputed institutions are experiencing, because today is the world of multidisciplinary work. Actually, we are culminating so many subjects together, and even the UGC is also inviting project applications on STRIDE basis. Have you heard of STRIDE? I don't know. STRIDE is actually a multidisciplinary concept where faculties of different departments are joining together, joining hands together in order to produce vibrant results regarding human affected problems, in order to find out solutions for human affected problems. In that way, if we look at definitely what PSMO is organizing today is in that path, because here we can see a joint effort of History Department, Economics, 2 chairs which are being functioning in our college. One is for Migration Studies and another one is for Indian Ocean Studies. And what we have received today is Mark ARANHA. As our Hasib sir mentioned, he's a well-versed personality, a multi performer too. I think he can be seen in a different way. Not only an academician, instead he's a performer too. So in that way, we have received such a vibrant resource person. See, in my presidential speech, I would like to give you an outline about why the two chairs of the college have joined together to organize this program. As Hasib sir mentioned, see, music and migration both are two globally related concepts which are closely connected with people also. One, migration is actually for life, for the existence of life, and music is actually, music in this genre, music of voyage is actually narrating why people have moved and what are the reasons behind such movement and what are the results of such movement. So in that way there arises a culmination between the two. Because when we look at migration, people have been migrated from time immemorials. They are migrated mainly for, in some cases it is for existence, in some cases it is for education, in some cases it is for to join with their native places. So migration is something which assumes so much significance in everyone's life. And as people from Malappuram, as people from Malabar, migration is a concept which has much relevance because Malappuram stands first in terms of the number of emigrants and in terms of the amount of remittances also. When we look at migration from Malappuram, see the culture that we are imbibed today, the culture that we are following today, the food habit that we have today, the dress code we have today is not the one that we had earlier. Because when we look at the history of Malabar, the situation was entirely different. But when we have been given an opportunity to migrate to the Middle East countries, we are started creating a culture and identity of our own. And the speciality of that culture is that it has a strong influence from the culture of Middle East countries. The food habit, the dress we wear, the way of life we are following, all these have a direct connection with the Gulf countries. The culture of the Gulf countries. See, say for example, if we are looking at the lifestyle of the people of Malappuram, I am telling Malappuram because Malappuram is having the largest number of migrants. We have imbibed even the education in such a way that if we are educated, definitely we will get a job. We want to get a job abroad. So that type of education, even education we are following in that way. And what is the role of music in such migration? It is actually something so significant as far as history and migration, international migration part is concerned. Because we have a separate wing, as Hasib has mentioned, that is called a letter song, Kattupat. When we look at letter songs, actually the first study on Kattupat was started in 1976 by K.N. Raj, an eminent scholar who started Center for Development Study for the first time. It was studied in 1976. And in that study, he clearly mentioned about different categories of letter songs. And when we look at those categories, we can categorize them into three. The first one, the problems of migration associated with, or the problems of migration of parents who left behind. When we look at if a male member is migrating from Kerala to the Middle East country, definitely there will be a problem. Who will look after the parents, the old people there? And the second category is actually the passion, the pain of separation associated with couples. When a male member is migrating, definitely it will have its own impact upon the wife and kids left behind. And the third category, there is also a third category, which is the emotional aspects associated with children. So the music of voyage is actually a category which is closely connected with migration. In that way, both chair for migration studies, MK Haji chair for migration studies, and Bake-Jairazbhoy chair is actually joining together. We are moving together. And I do believe that out of the experience that Mark Aran is going to share with you will be thought-provoking, because we will have to experience how music and migration is going together, how music is contributing towards migration and vice versa. So definitely it will be an opportunity, and it is moving in the multidisciplinary manner. That is what actually the modern education is demanding. And I think history department students are so fortunate because you only are able to sit here, because if we have number of seats available, definitely we would have invited students from economics department also, but unfortunately it is not possible. So you are the fortunate people to hear and to take part in such discussion. Definitely you have to utilize such occasions also. With these words, I am expressing my heartfelt gratitude to Mark ARANHA and inviting our beloved principal to inaugurate the function. Thank you.
Morning. Respected resource person for the day, Mark ARANHA, research scholar, University of Witwatersrand, South Africa. Dear Dr. Shibinu, who is chairing the function, Dr. Department of Economics and Director of Haji Chair for Migrant Studies. Dear Haji, Director of Bake-Jairazbhoy Chair for Indian Ocean Studies. Other faculty members of the Department of History, research scholars and dear students. We started our journey on ethnomusicology and music from 2018 onwards, actually. We cannot forget the day January 4th, 2018. On that day, one eminent professor from California University visited PSMO College. Professor Bake-Jairazbhoy. I also wondered. A lady came with a lot of old recordings made from our region, 1938. Recordings of Arnold Backe. She's explaining this particular song is recorded from Parapanangadi. This is from TIRURANGADI region. This is from Pullangod estate, like that. And also on that day, the first page of Hindu newspaper. Hindu is, all of you know, the standard of Hindu paper.
Yeah.
The front page of Hindu newspaper, a report came with a caricature of a lady carrying a tape recorder on one hand and pulling a trolley bag on other hand. That paper cutting is with me. That is one report given by Dr. P.P. Abdul Razak, the head of the Department of History at that time. And also by understanding the importance of that event, the Hindu paper given that report in the front page. A report in the front page of Hindu is something great. Really, they honored Amy Carlin. Then after coming into this seminar hall, she made a lot of recordings that is not clear, really. Then we brought some eminent persons connected with the music in our area, especially Mapula Patu, Faisal Alatil and others came. Firozka came, Firoz Babu. He also attended that program and tried to understand the details of that song, lines and other details. In the further journey, at that time Hasib was not here. Continuation of that journey, Hasib also joined. Now we are continuing that activities with Muhammad Hasib, because he is also a singer, Kolkali performer, connected with various activities of Mapala art items. Then Amy Carlin came again, 2019, January 14, because I remember all these dates. Then 2020, also January, she is a professor of Januaries. 2018 January, 19 January, 20 January. But no visit on 21 and 22. Why? Because of COVID. We missed some good programs due to COVID. You missed a lot. You missed your campus. because of the COVID outbreak. We also missed a lot. But I'm happy to mention that last week there was a webinar with Professor Annie Candle was the resource person. She mentioned she will visit in the next January. Again, Professor is coming on next January. You will get a chance to meet her. She is doing a lot on Mapalapata recordings. As mentioned by Shibanu, Kathapata, you know, Etreyum Bahumana Pate and Priya Bhartavu Vaikuvan. You know that one. Lot of songs are available. Just Google and search. Ipada Patil Atra Baker. ആ പാട്ടുകൾ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞത് മാപ്പിള ആ കത്തുപാട്ട് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ അന്നത്തെ ഒരു വല്ലാത്തൊരു ട്രെൻഡാണ് 1970s and 80s. 70s, 80s was the starting time of migration in our area. Before that one, migration was to Ceylon and some other areas. 2070-80, that period, from our area, migration started to Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, UAE and other countries. ഞാൻ രണ്ട് കാര്യം മലയാളത്തിൽ പറയാണ്, പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും കുട്ടികൾക്ക് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി. ആ കത്തുപാട്ടുകൾ നിങ്ങൾ കേൾക്കണം. അത് കേട്ടാൽ അതിൽ ചില ലൈൻസ് ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ട്. അന്നത്തെ ഒരു വിരഹമാണ് പറയുന്നത്. ആ ഭാര്യമാരുടെ വിരഹം ഭർത്താവ് മറുപടിയാക്കുന്നത് കേട്ടുനോക്കി നിങ്ങൾ. ശരി, കുറച്ച് ഇതൊക്കെ തോന്നും ചിലപ്പോൾ കേട്ടാൽ. വല്ലാത്ത ലൈൻസ് ആണ്. കൂട്ടാതെ തന്തയായ മന്നാന്റെ ഒരു കാള. ഓക്കെ, എന്നാ ഭർത്താവാക്കുന്നത് ഇതിൽ പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇവിടെ വിരഹവേദനയായിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഭാര്യയുടെ ആ ഒരു മറുപടി ഉണ്ട്. അന്നത്തെ that was a trend at that time. That S.A. Jamil. S.A. Jamil was popular due to writing Kathabata. Okay, you have to say, history students should know that one. Economics also has mentioned by Shibli, because migration and migration music are related. Okay, always and I mentioned today morning, music is connected with all subjects. Music is not a part of history, not a part of economics. Okay, it is a part of body, zoology. Okay, only one thing, that person should like music. I was a man used to hear music every day 2 hours. Yeah, every day 2 hours before coming to PSMO college. After coming to PSMO college, my music lost. Totally lost, because I am hearing, I am learning, I am listening music during the program of history department. That only. Because at that time, I used to get the time 1 hour morning and 1 hour evening driving time. To my old college, it will take 1 hour driving. Okay, full time music. From home to college, from college to home. 2 hours I got for listening music. Okay, anyway, I am not taking much time. We are continuing with the activities of history department. The chair for Bake-Jairazbhoy chair for Indian Studies and also Haji chair. That is when with our last NAC visit August 23rd and 24th. Before that one, last year, in one program organized in connection with the quality improvement in college, the resource person mentioned, you should establish chairs in college. Don't കുട്ടികൾ കൺഫ്യൂസ് ആവേണ്ട. ചെയർ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇരിക്കുന്ന കസേരല്ല. ഓക്കെ, ചെയർ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ റിസർച്ച് സെന്റർ. Serious research should be there. In university, many chairs are there, university level. College, no chairs are there in other colleges. PSMO is having 2 chairs. That's also a strange thing. When that resource person mentioned about establishment of chairs in college, same day, afternoon, we sit together. Dr. Shibunu and Asiba was also with me. We decided to establish chair in PSMO college. Decisions are only like that. Okay, when we are going for elaborate discussion and other activities, that will not be success, will not work. Okay, we decided to establish chairs. I remember at that time our manager M.K. Baba Sahib was in Dubai. I sent a voice message to him. In that voice, it is still in my phone. അങ്ങയുടെ പിതാവിന്റെ പേരിൽ ഒരു ചെയർ കൊടുക്കാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു. ചെയർ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇന്നതാണ്, അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് അറിയില്ലത്. ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ചെയർ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിക്ക് ഉള്ളതാണ്. നമ്മളിത് നാക്കുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ട് ഒരു ചെയർ കൊടുക്കുന്നു. ഉപ്പയുടെ പേരിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ ഈ പേരിൽ ഒരു ചെയർ ഞങ്ങൾ എക്കണോമിക്സ് ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ ഒന്ന് തുടങ്ങാൻ വിചാരിക്കുന്നു എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. ഓക്കെ, ഐ ഗോട്ട് റിപ്ലൈ. ഓക്കെ, യു സ്റ്റാർട്ട്. That's our manager. He's also his vision also there in organizing programs of this kind in our college. He replied, yes, you start. MKRG chair for migrant studies started with Shibunu as its director. Immediately we started second one also. That is why 2 chairs we established. Why? Why we are established chairs, and also why we are organizing international programs, seminars and workshops, seminars, workshops and also webinars during COVID time. Still we are continuing. Because one of the most important motto of NAC, National Accreditation Assessment Council, is internationalization of education. Internationalization of education. What is international education? International education, simply if you are saying, when you are doing your graduation work, graduation study for 3 years, you have to take minimum international tour. You have to visit some foreign universities. Then you have to stay there for some time. Then you have to prepare a project work there by discussing with the professors of that university. That is not at all possible in our country. And also, as you mentioned, twice during this last 5 years, 2018 and 2019, students from New York University, Abu Dhabi visited PSMO College as part of their project work. Their graduate students from Abu University visited our college as part of their project work. Okay, but from here, it is not possible to take students from India to outside. But what we can do? We can bring eminent professors to PSMO College and expose them to students. That we are doing. Okay, and our history department is fortunate in getting maximum number of eminent professors from various countries, from America, UK, South Africa, etc., etc. We brought here and organized programs, and also after the outbreak of COVID, we started organizing webinars. That also important. Last week also we organized one webinar. Okay, we are introducing eminent scholars to you. This man is very young. Okay, dynamic, an eminent man in ethnomusicology. He studied economics, then ethnomusicology, musicology, everything. Okay, today you will experience that one. That topic is melody and identity. Okay, he is in search of identity through melodies. Melody and identity, following the Bake archives in Cochin. He is also behind Arnold Bake, recordings of 1938. Okay, hence you experience his presentation, interact with him. Okay, squeeze maximum out of it. The word I would like to use is squeezing maximum data from it. Okay, with these words I conclude. Very happy to inaugurate this seminar on melody and identity, following the Bake archives in Cochin. And also a request, dear Mark ARANHA, to find time to come to PSMO College in future also. Okay, because we are organizing a series of talks. In that one, you should be a regular visitor of PSMO College and also organize some activities to our students. And also only 2-3 classes only sitting here. We have economic students are there, history, one class is missing. Okay. Malayalam also, yeah, Malayalam also you know, because Maapalapattu padikkunnarakku Malayalam padikkatte pattula. Okay. So Malayalam, because I basically belong to Mangalore region. Okay. Malayalam also he knows. Okay. Anyway, thoda. Okay. Okay. Anyway, Hindi will come to my time because by talking with these all Hindi walas, Bengalis, Biharis, talking on campus. Okay, always you can see principal is talking with them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I learned Hindi now. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wish all the very best for this program. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the thought-provoking talk. Actually, principal has mentioned everything regarding chair, its activities, its aims, objectives, etc. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the vibrant session. With next, I think it's time to interact with our chief guest. With much happiness, with much respect, I invite dear Mark ARANHA to deliver his keynote address.
Hello again to all of you, and thanks for being here. Thank you so much, Dr. Shabino and Mr. Haji and the principal for welcoming me so wholeheartedly and so warmly. Thank you so much. And also thank you so much for talking about your vision on this for this college, and giving me an idea, because I came here with a presentation on a specific topic. This topic is based on my research during my masters. Okay, it's a small section of my master's research. It's something that I thought would be interesting to present, in a single lecture. But I think contextualizing it within the space of Indian Ocean studies, this is important, and I'm very glad that you've laid the foundation for that. Music and especially speaking about music and migration. So I think I should also give you a little bit of background on my research project. So my work, this work on the Baki archives, this actually, this is situated within a larger research project. This research project is called Recentering Afro-Asia. It's something that I would encourage you to find online. It's currently based at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, but previously at the University of Cape Town, where I did my masters. And this project looks at human and musical migrations in the pre-colonial period, so between 700 to 1500 AD. And the idea was to look at, well, first of all, a history that precedes the colonial period. So, I mean, of course, all of you all are quite young, and you're studying it now. But I'm not sure what the history syllabus is these days. But traditionally, in the past, a lot of history focuses on a Eurocentric narrative. We often tend to speak in Eurocentric words, in Eurocentric terms. So, this statement is very dated now, but it was very common before, like Columbus discovered America. Right? A thing like that. It was almost as if before the arrival of the Europeans, there was no history. Okay? So obviously we know that that's not true. Right? In India, we know that's not true. But in the larger discourse of the subject, that's been the case. So this is one of those efforts, and this was fun. This is one of those efforts to sort of revisit and reimagine that history. And how do we do this? We also, okay, so traditionally you're looking at historical sources. What are your sources for history? How do you know that something happened in history? Any answers? What is a legitimate source for history? Anyone, like one or two words, it's fine.
You can interact, okay?
Yeah.
You have something pop up in your mind, you can freely.
Yeah, please. I would like to. I'd like to interact a little bit. So, what do you think? Yeah. Tell me. Inscriptions, exactly. Brilliant. Exactly. Inscriptions, right? Because these are written records that have survived through time, because they're inscribed into stone or into something that lasts. So you have a concrete piece of evidence that says that this is what happened because it's written over here. Okay. So these are our written sources. Okay. So you have texts, right? We have inscriptions. But anything that doesn't survive, there's no evidence for that in that definition of evidence. So what are the other things that we can look at? Songs are one of those pieces of evidence that you have to broaden the definition of historical evidence to include that, because it's something that is passed on over the ages. It's passed on through generations or within a community. but it carries important information. So, to look at songs, to look at music, to look at melodies, these things help us to imagine what it would have been like in the past. And I say imagine because we can't know for sure. In fact, we can't even know for sure with certain inscriptions, because those inscriptions are written by someone in power. And there again, you have to have a balanced and a sort of a skeptical reading of all evidence, equally skeptical. So, recentering Afro-Asia also looks at, it also considers evidence from the aesthetic fields, like art, like philosophy, like music, melodies, and songs, poetry. So, but we don't have a lot of old recordings, right? We don't have a lot of old evidence of, what would be the equivalent of an inscription for music? There will be a recording. But recording technology is very new. So, Anil Bake actually provides us with some of the oldest known recordings of this kind. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This is going to come from, as I said, my master's research. And just in the interest of time, because I know this is timed, I'm going to read from a script. Okay. Please feel free to write down any questions that you might have. Okay. And if there's something, if you also need me to stop and explain something on the screen, just stop me. Okay. It's no problem. Alright. So, my first introduction to the Jews of Kerala was through a collection of recordings at the Archives and Research Center for Ethnomusicology in Gurgaon. These were made in 1938 by the Dutch musicologist Anil Bake. We received an interesting introduction to Bake earlier this month in Amy Catlin's lecture. Bake was a Dutch scholar of India. He had studied Sanskrit and Arabic. He was also a recording pioneer. He collaborated with Tagore, making films and archiving religious music in Shantiniketan. It's likely that he was also the first to travel so extensively across India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, documenting not only the so-called classical forms, but also the folk and the subaltern art and music of India. His collection includes photographs, wax cylinders, open reel tape, 16mm film, and Teflon tapes. He spent multiple stints in India between 1924 and 1948. These recordings were taken in 1938, and this is significant for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that it's just simply the first known audio recordings of this community in India. Secondly, it seems that these are the only recordings of the Jews of Cochin that predate the formation of Israel and the resultant emigration of much of Kerala's Jewish population. Are you all aware of the current population of Jews in Cochin? No? So currently it's just a few families, maybe 20 or 30 people at max. Okay? And prior to this formation of Israel, we know that the population of Jews would have been somewhere around 2,500. Okay? And so Israel was formed in 1948, and there was an open call for all the Jews around the world to come to Israel and come home to their mother. To make Aliyah. Okay. So now these Bake recordings were not accompanied by any notes. Amy Bake-Jairazbhoy had told us that, Baki recorded his notes, he wrote down some notes, but he said he sent them home via post. And there was a world war going on at the time, and his notes were just lost. And I think in other sources, we also have some comments about his notes being illegible, like he wrote in this really terrible handwriting and no one could figure out what he'd written, or something to that effect. So the ARCE, where I got my recordings, this provides a basic catalog with the sound archive. So this is a photocopy of a document that was retyped by a person called Alistair Dick in 1967. So this is all the information that we had, right? It's just titles, a serial number, the place and date of the recordings. That's it. So this research was my first foray into the field of academia. Previously I was primarily engaged in music as being a performer. So I knew, I had some contextual knowledge, the idea of the Indian Ocean as a pre-colonial network of exchange, Kerala as one of the most important cosmopolitan regions and hubs of that trade. But before using that information, my approach, okay, so this is part of my methodology. So my approach was to come at this material as a musician, right? Before applying all of the historical stuff. So as I listen, I just listen. So the first step is when you have musical evidence, you listen. And there was one melody that sounded different to the others. Okay, at first listen. So when I looked at the catalog, it was the one that said Black Jews. Okay, so immediately this creates a different picture. So not only do we have Jews, but we have Black Jews. Okay, so curious. Baki has written Black Jews, right? So now we don't have a lot of information, but amongst this sparse information we have this term. So it must have been very significant for him to write this. So who are these people, and then who are the others if they were not Black Jews? So I'll give you a brief history of the Jews in Kerala. So local legend, the tradition says that the Jews were already present in Kerala when St. Thomas the Apostle was supposed to have arrived there in the 1st century CE. We have copper plates, inscriptions, right? Hebrew signatures in the column copper plates of 850 CE give us the first inscriptional evidence of the Jews in Kerala. Another significant inscription is the royal grant of 72 aristocratic rights to an international merchant guild, the Anjumanam, and its Jewish leader Isupu Irappan in Muyurikod in 1000 CE. Thereafter, we have various accounts that point to a Jewish presence in Kerala from the 11th to the 15th century. Now, most of these Jewish visitors and settlers would have been of probably Egyptian and West Asian origin, including Yemeni, Baghdadi, and some others. Pre-colonial Kerala had gained a reputation as a warm and hospitable place for the Jews. You may have heard a lot of narratives about Jews being persecuted wherever they went. But in Kerala, they found a very nice and welcoming place. So a number of these Jews that had been displaced by the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal, they started to arrive around the 16th century. And they gained such favor with the king of Cochin that he allowed them to build a synagogue on his palace grounds adjacent to his temple. This formed the beginnings of what would become the Pardesi Jewish community from the 16th century onwards. So all the previously existing Jews in Kerala, so we know that Jews existed now for at least since the 9th century. But once this Pardesi Jewish community gets established, all of the other Jews become Malabari Jews. With early earlier there was no need to make this distinction, but now you have Pardesi and Malabari simply because you have got the establishment of the Pardesi. So this is a process called othering, and maybe, or you know, you have come across these things. So despite the fact that they far outnumbered their more prosperous counterparts, the Malabaris were relatively underrepresented in scholarly literature. Some of them allege that their historical narratives, stories of migration and other traditions were distorted and appropriated by the Pardesis. I have written a bit about this in my thesis. You can Google, and if you Google my name, you'll probably find my thesis online at the University of Cape Town. So throughout the colonial period, European visitors tended to restrict their visits to the island of Cochin, and then they focused their studies on the Pardesi Jews. And this is simply because they spoke the language. When a foreigner comes to this place, you have the island, it's the most accessible place, and you've got people who speak European languages and even look European. So it's much easier to converse with them, and it's much easier to accept whatever they say. And it's much easier to ignore everyone else who doesn't look like you, doesn't speak your language. So there's a sort of distance. And because of this, it skewed historical scholars' work. People would come and write ethnographies, and they would write oral histories, and that would get skewed. Actually, yeah, we can just spend a little bit of time on this. So these are the different synagogues, okay, that we know of. They all exist in different states of sort of either disrepair or being well maintained. So you have a whole concentration of synagogues around Kochi and Ernakulam, and then a little bit north you've got some more. But only one of these synagogues, only one of these congregations was Pardesi. All the others are Malabari. So we need to also think about what is Pardesi and what is Malabari, and now what is black and white, okay, and what is the sort of relationship between these things. So let's talk about whiteness. Whiteness, maybe it's a thing, a race. It's a thing that's emerging around the 16th and 17th century as the Dutch are exploring, and you start getting these ideas of race that are simultaneously developing in America and all around the world. So within a few decades of their arrival, the Pardesi Jews began to construct this race-based identity for themselves as white Jews. It was woven in with myths of ancient origin, stories of that we were the first. So not only did they say that we are white, but they also said that we are the original. Okay, this is a big thing in a lot of communities in Kerala, to say that we are the original people. It's a very important part of building that prestige as a community. So this was readily reproduced by all the visiting scholars and writers. In 1687, a Jew visiting from Amsterdam, Mose Pereira de Paiva, he was very taken with these Pardesis. He publishes a document called Relación de las Noticias de los Judíos de Cochin. So this becomes the European point of reference for the Jews of Cochin. So he calls them the Jews of Cochin. But you can see the Jews are spread out over quite a large areas. So the Pardesis had presented De Paiva with the copper plates. Those copper plates that you saw earlier. So they had it in their possession, and they showed it to him, and they said, look, this is proof that we are authentic, we are the authentic people, and we are of ancient lineage. So De Paiva doesn't bother to question how these guys could be related to Joseph Raban if they had only arrived after the expulsion from Spain. Okay, so there is some sort of anachronism going on. But instead he goes on to list now the families of the communities in his census. So the screenshot, this is from his census. Okay, and he makes sure over here in this thing to label all the important Jews B, and B stands for blancos or brancos, which is Portuguese for whites. as for the black Jews, so-called black Jews, he alleges that they were descendants of the slaves of the Jews of Karanganor, Kodangallur, which is the original. Yes.
This I want to clarify.
Definitely.
before moving further.
Yeah.
Because all these parts of our syllabus, especially the students of the 5th semester students of
Mm.
history, they have to study all these steps. So my question is that, and I'm also a little confused, these Jewish copper plates given to the Joseph Rabban, whether that belong to the white Jews or the black Jews?
So, this is the thing that we only know. Look, if you go by oral narratives, everyone will give you a different story. Okay? But we know that the Pardesi Jews had this in their possession. Okay? There is quite a bit of complexity going on over here. Alright? One of the important things that makes it complex is that this B for Brancos or white that is being marked on the names of these people, it doesn't, if you see their names, those are not white names. Okay? There's some guy from Aleppo, I mean not some guy, but you know there's a Jew from Aleppo, there's a Jew from all these different places, including the family of Jews that is supposed to be the original from Karanganor, they are also marked as B or white. Now, you can imagine being in this country for hundreds and hundreds of years, alright, versus even if you're very, I mean, these are slightly tricky things to talk about because we don't know, but they are white. The person coming from Poland is also white. So, what is whiteness exactly in this case? Okay. Let's kind of remember that whiteness is just purely a construct, right? It's sort of an imagined thing. It was very important for the Pardesis to establish themselves as a higher caste. Part of that is to build this narrative of ancient lineage. The second part of it is to build a narrative of whiteness, because now they can identify with the Dutch and the Portuguese, because those people are interested in whiteness. They have a prejudice against what is the black, and this is actually discussed. This is discussed in some of this work. Well, if I've written about it. Jonathan Schorsch is the scholar who has written about whiteness. Okay, so if you go to him, you will see he gives you a lot of instances, and in my thesis I've added a few more from other scholars. Okay, of why it was important to say that we are white. It's not that we are actually physically glowing white, okay, and those people are like, it's not because of that. It's to position the community, in my opinion.
Sort of similar to the identity theories superiority.
Yeah. In this case, it's not even superior. I mean, it's just to identify. So those people identify with you. So you know, if actually some of these, there are letters from some people from the Pardesi community writing to Europe saying that there are people here who are black, like Ethiopians. So just by writing that line, it means that I position myself against that other person. So he is like an Ethiopian, and I am by
Certain racial superiority are they claiming?
yeah. So it's part of that. So that they can relate to them, so that they can get the trade, so that they can get the connections and all the other advantages that come with that.
So my understanding here, whiteness indicates the status of some particular community.
Yeah, that's what I think. And I think that afterwards, then it becomes a whole other thing, you know, because once you write B, once you write blancos, once you write whites, and it sort of gets carried on, because now it's written, and now that it's written, it must be real. You understand how things, how narratives are built. I mean, at least this is what my reading is from this. So, okay, so let's go to the archives. So, Bake-Jairazbhoy and Amy Kathleen Jairazbhoy, they conducted a restudy of Bake's work in 1984. Jairazbhoy had previously been Bake's student and research assistant at the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS. It's a very good school. If you haven't heard of it, you should check it out. Think about studying there sometime. He took up this restudy alongside his wife, Amy Kathleen Jairazbhoy, in an effort to replicate Bake's findings and explore his methodologies. So here I have a map of the routes, the two routes that were followed. So this is the route that Bake followed, where he traveled, where he stopped, and where he took his recordings. And this was the restudy. So to study these Jewish recordings, they visited Cochin, where they were hosted by the Coder family. They were the leaders of the Pardesi community. The researchers tried to find people who might remember Bake's visit, perhaps identify, contextualize some of the songs. See, even they didn't have a lot of information on these recordings. So their work confirmed that Bake had recorded songs from not only the Pardesi congregation, but also by some of the Malabari Jews. However, it seems that they did not venture into the Ernakulam synagogues or cover any Malabari Jewish sources on this trip. And I had some speculation on why this would be the case. Maybe it's because the Ernakulam synagogues at that time were kind of in disrepair and not being used so much. The community hadn't sort of bounced back as it has recently. You know, in 2018, I'll explain. I'll tell you about the renovation of one of the synagogues under Elias Babu Joseph. So, but of course, we can consult Amy Kathleen herself, and we can talk about it. So, we can listen to some songs. Okay, so this is the Kadabum synagogue in Ernakulam. So during my visits to Cochin and Ernakulam, I focused on Malabari sources because I found that they are ignored. So this enabled me to gather information on the same recordings, the same Bake recordings, and in one case, this Black Jew song actually they were not able to identify. Because they had Pardesi sources, right? And those Pardesi sources, we don't know what the song is. They skipped over it. And so I was able to get, that song. I found some people who remembered that song singing along with the recording. So I was also fortunate to be invited to a special Sefer Torah ceremony for this synagogue. Sefer Torah is when a new Torah scroll, that's the scripture that's presented to the synagogue. So it kind of represents like a refreshing of the congregation and the synagogue. So by the 1970s, most of this congregation here, they had left for Israel. The remaining Jews could not put together the minyan. So you need a minyan of minimum 10 Jewish men who can read the Torah to hold the service. So they could not put together those 10 men, so they could not have the service. So the community could not hold the prayers there any longer. So other Malabari synagogues fell into disrepair. Elias Josephi, the son of the Kadabum synagogue's Khazan singer, he took up the task of preserving the synagogue. So funds are not easy to come by, but over the years he managed to maintain the premises by using this grounds to run a nursery and a flower business. So he was he's selling fish and flowers. It's a business called Cochin Blossoms. So the Chaznatzat Sefer Torah ceremony, it celebrates presentation of a new Torah scroll. It was significant for Elias and the synagogue, as it marked the completion of the synagogue's renovation 46 years after it had been closed in 1972. So there was no way that Amy Kathleen or Jairazbhoy could have been there around that time. So a group of Malabari Jews traveled from Israel for the event. So I got some time to interview them and record some songs. that on the right, that is, I mean, on my right, that is Elias Joseph. And this is this Sefer Torah. So now, after setting up the whole context, we can come to some ideas of melody and identity. Okay. So it had become apparent from my conversations, my interviews, that melodic aesthetics, these hold significant value for the Cochinim. The Cochinim are the Cochini Jews. So they took pride in telling me which tunes are unique to their congregation, to their synagogue, or to the Jews of Kerala as against the others. So in Israel, melodies for the same text could be quite different depending on the tradition. A Moroccan melody would be different to a Yemeni Jewish melody, that would be different to an Ashkenazi Jewish melody. For the Koshanim, the melodies seem to vary even between their own synagogues. So one of my respondents, he is an excellent singer. So his voice would stand out if everyone else singing together. His voice stands out. Why? Because of the way he sang the ends of the melody. Okay? So the skeletal notes are the same, but the ornamentation was very different. So I asked him about this, and this is what he says. So he says it's very simple, in every place you're influenced by where you're living. So if you have two synagogues, even if they're close to each other, I want to show that I'm different from you. So if I have a good song, I want to finish like this. And if you are, so he says, if you are the father, your son hear it. So basically, he learned it from his father, and he's talking about how it's passed down through the generations. Okay, so what's happening here is that I went to Elias's house for Shabbat, and so they were singing some prayers, okay, singing some songs together. So the two voices that you're hearing are these two members of this same community, but one of them is sounding, you can hear one of them sounds quite different. He's singing a slightly different melody. Okay, so while we sort the technical issues, so you hear that, that's the extra. So that extra ending, only one of them is doing that. Okay, so I hope you were able to discern something from that. So this is an example of a melodic, what I would call a melodic, almost like an artifact, like it's a piece of evidence, or it's a piece of their identity. That's what he's talking about here. He says this is the identity of our congregation. That's why we sing it like this, because we want to show that we are different. Or actually, we want to show that we are better because we have a better melody. Okay, so okay, so I have another. So this was a story, okay, an anecdote. No evidence. I mean, no recording for this. But he's talking about this prayer which he calls Musaf. All right. So he says 100 or maybe 1,000 years, meaning there's a sort of lack of sense of the exact scale of time. But once upon a time, some people arrived from Europe and they said, no, we should pray these prayers in a different version. So now you see, you have already got existing communities of Jews. Then another wave of migration comes in, another set of people come in, but they need to practice their traditions in their way because it is essential to their identity. If they start practicing the new places, traditions, then they will lose their sense of history and their sense of identity, which is very important for them to maintain. So they say, no, we played another version. So this causes a fight for almost 5 years. These two groups are fighting, okay, and they ended up praying in 2 shifts. So one of them starts 6 to 8, another one does 8 to 10. All right, and again the point is being made that religious people were having arguments about the melody of a prayer. So that is the level of importance that it has. It's not only for religious purposes, it's also for their own identity. So there's another audio link here, which we can try to play. So let's see. They sang it in a different tune. Huh? This is the original tune. So now he's kind of making a parody of the other group. Okay, so he first sings his own song with a lot of respect and the way that it should be sung. So he says this is from the Palur synagogue. Okay, now he says this is how the Pardesi sings it, and he's to him it's like it's totally wrong and it should never be done. So he's talking about copies. If you take a photocopy, the quality is not good. And again, in this statement of the copy and the photocopy, the implicit, what is implicit in that statement? It's that they have copied us. That they have taken our song and they are singing it as their own. But see, it's still not good enough. That's what he said. So, this is a musicological sort of an analysis that I did. Just 2 small conclusions from this. I mean, 2 small things that I can point out. In the Cochini tunes, what makes the Cochini tunes different from the other Israeli tunes? The other, not Israeli, but the other traditional Jewish tunes, that you have a small range, okay? So you don't go too far. So from sa, you know sa re ga ma pa, right? So from sa maybe you're going to pa. Okay, and maybe one time you might go to the higher sa, but actually you don't spend a lot of time there. You're basically going and in stepwise motion. So from sa you will usually go to re to ga, but from sa you won't go to ma, sa, pa, sa. You won't sa, tha. You won't do that. So these are things that they know themselves as well, because they've said this to me in so many words. Even though they are not musicologists or they are not formally studied music, they know, they are aware of this fact, and it is also apparent in all of the recordings. You don't see that high range. But if you go to Europe and if you see Ashkenazi melodies, you will see the opposite of this thing. Okay? So this is one way in which we can say, okay, look, this is a kind of characteristic that's happening here. It's different from the other set. But what does this tell us? We can think about it. We can now that we have some piece of information, the next time we look at some other kind of music, we can use this information to see, is this tallying or not? Alright? And I think in a lot of Mapla music, you have the same characteristics. Right? And it may be also the case in many other regions. So then you can start connecting. You see the effect of these are effects of migration, and these are effects of sort of acculturation and mingling. You know, just social mingling. Then it sort of seeps into the music. It seeps into the aesthetics. So there are some things that are different, but some things also get borrowed. So this was so this is an example of a transcription. Okay, so these are musical notes, and those dots are the notes, and the way the dot goes up and down, that is the sort of contour of the pitch going up and down, and the lines and the spaces represent notes. So as you go up, it's like sa re ga ma pa, then sa going up, and as you go from left to right, you can see these lines, vertical lines. They are rhythmic notation. Okay, so that tells you how often the note is occurring, at what frequency. And in this particular thing, in this black juice, remember I said that it sounded different. And the reason was that it actually contains notes that change. So you actually have, let's say, a ga, third note, third degree, that in one place it is flat, and in another place it is natural. Okay, so on its own, this is not a very incredible thing. This is true in many kinds of music, but the other recordings didn't have that. So when it came to the Baldisi recordings, or they were not classified as Baldisi recordings, they were just called Cochin recordings, Jewish recordings, you had a particular kind of sound. And then when you come to this kind of recording that says Black Jews, now you have a different sound, and it is objectively measurable. I can demonstrate to you that it is different by doing this transcription. So that implies a different identity, that implies maybe a migration from a different place. Right? Because even amongst folk music within Kerala, you don't have a lot of this modal, what I call modal, I'm not calling it, but it's called modal mixture. Okay? We have different scales that kind of, that are like interchanged. Okay, that's it for my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
plastic chair back
now,
Ah,
right?
need a mic.
At least, I mean, actually, maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, so this music that I'm going to play, this has nothing to do with my research. It has nothing to do with my work in this college. Okay. So I don't have a very strong voice. So you have to be like to hear.
Silence.
In fact, can you turn off the fans?
Yeah, no problem. ആ മൈക്ക് ഓഫ് ചെയ്തേ.
AC.
ആ നോ ദിസ് വൺ.
Projector.
പ്രൊജക്ടർ ഓഫ് ചെയ്തോ.
Maybe.
അല്ല ഒരു ചെറിയ വോയിസ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ ഈ സ്പീക്കറിന്. സ്പീക്കർ ഓഫ് അല്ലേ? സ്വിച്ച് ഓഫ് ചെയ്താൽ മതി.
My time has run out. You are the voice in my heart. You are the words that I start to speak. It's complete. My heart is a place. This is the end, I'm afraid. This promise once made can never be betrayed. I belong only to you, only to you. I bear the sin of the mess we were in. It felt like there's nothing to gain. We've been through the worst and we've come out. I belong only. Yes, I belong only. I belong only.
Nice. So, shall we wrap up this session or you want to sing one more?
We can wrap up.
Then, I request on behalf of the chair, Fahad to propose the vote of
ആ അല്ല അത് ഓണാക്കി മതി. മൊത്തം ഓഫ് ചെയ്യണം. എന്താണ് എന്ത് പറ്റി?
I'm not gonna sing any song for sure. So I'm not either Mark or Asif perform some song over here, but anyway, I won't take much time because you all, I don't want to. You all are in hunger now. It's lunch break already, but anyway, very heartfelt thanks and gratitude to Mark first of all for a wonderful session and with a song. Because it's good thing that the people who work on performing arts always ends with some performing arts as well. So thank you for a wonderful song also towards the end. Other than that, the rich sources which he has been produced along entire topic, and he also covered a lot of ethno musical aspects on like Indian Ocean studies, and very thanks for on behalf of the both MK chair for migration studies and Indian Ocean studies, Bake-Jairazbhoy Indian Ocean studies. I'm very on behalf of the both chair at the college and the department, I express my gratitude and thanks for you being here and delivering a wonderful lecture. And thank you and all, and also thank you for all the sessions made very fruitful because of your participation of all my students, and I express my gratitude and thanks all of you being here for listening and your patientful listening for Mark. And I also wish for Mark for in your future, we expect you with more and more topics on ethnomusiology, on various issues and other horizons. I expect you be here for the near future. Yeah. So that's all. And thank you for Hasim sir and Shibnu sir for organizing and inviting Mark over here for our college. Thank you and all once again.